That was the beautiful sounds of Zahara. Thank you to everyone who's joining us for this particular live broadcast. Igama lami nguSiyabonga Pride Khuzwayo, and this is the voice of the community, of course, NCR 103.7 FM. Welcome to the show. Welcome to everyone who's joining us via live stream on Facebook. Thank you for taking the time to join us once again. I know today we're competing, of course, with the President of the Republic, on the pronouncement that he's about to make on the COVID virus. So everyone who is listening to the President, I suppose it's the responsible thing to do, but to you who is listening and joining us for this particular live broadcast, we'll join the President on the headlines, and we'll pick up on some of the positive pronouncements, of course, that he's going to make today with regards, of course, to this particular pandemic that has continued to dominate headlines in the past couple of weeks now, for almost the entire month of February and for March so far. The most topical thing that we have been talking about, of course, is COVID-19 or the coronavirus, if you may call it that. I'd like to, of course, start our weekly roundup by, of course, catching up on some of the recent pronouncements that were made with regards to this particular issue. Our health department, of late, disappointingly so, did make a pronouncement, of course, that some unfortunate coronavirus cases or incidents have emerged over the past week, and the toll of diagnosed people who have contracted the virus has risen to about 51 confirmed cases. So, of course, slowly, but this particular issue is gaining traction within, of course, our country particularly, and of course with KZN being one of the first few affected provinces, we look on, of course, with bated breath, with the hope that the presidency as well as the Ministry of Health will be able, of course, to steer us clear of this particular pandemic. Of course, the presidency is going to make some pronouncements, of course, on how they plan to contain the spread of this particular virus. A lot of people have been very concerned about the flat-footedness, of course, of our presidency, particularly with regards to taking decisive action against, of course, curbing this particular epidemic. A lot of people have been watching what is happening in the international media, particularly with what China has done, the US has done of late. We know that President Trump, of course, of the United States, in a media briefing or from the Oval Office, did, of course, impose travel restrictions, if you may call it that, to all of the so-called COVID-19 hotspots, of course, in the European region. He did, of course, say that there would be no incoming, of course, traffic, of course, of European nationals into the United States until they had further clarity as to how bad or how severe, of course, this particular case is, and of course until they have the right contingency, of course, of containing this particular epidemic. So we're waiting, of course, on our own presidency to show us beyond, of course, the basic stuff that the World Health Organization has been talking about, because the World Health Organization, in all honesty, has been telling us about basic hygiene, and there's a lot of talk about basic hygiene all of a sudden, a lot of talk around respiratory hygiene, when we sneeze, avoiding, of course, passing on these droplets, either saliva or, anything that might come from your mouth, and that could be viewed as an agent or a means of contracting or passing on the virus, And of course, there are lots of people who've been wearing masks, Someone very close to me sent me a picture wearing a mask, And for me, it was it was quite funny, People who have contracted the virus should be wearing masks. Not everyone. Not everyone should be wearing a mask, because the virus is not airborne, guys. It's not airborne. It's only when you sneeze, when you have to contain, of course, how you sneeze so that you don't spread the germs onto, of course, the air or the atmosphere. And people, nowadays they just say you must maintain at least 1 meter. You should be 1 meter away from someone, from everyone. If you're in a public space, so that at least you've got breathing space and people can't necessarily contaminate the air that you are breathing. But the virus itself is not airborne, guys. So we don't have to go around wearing masks. I've seen some people at the mall avoiding Chinese people altogether. They don't go to China City anymore. They don't go to Chinese restaurants. And I'm like, okay, guys, it's a bit extreme. But it's okay. It's okay. There's absolutely nothing with being cautious, at all. If you're being precautious, that is the most responsible thing for you to do. We're going to be looking at COVID-19 in a different perspective, if I may put it like that. In this particular week, we're going to be looking at COVID-19 and the economic effects that the virus actually has. So the virus has got what you call economic implications. So the implications are very widespread. They're not only affecting South Africa, but they're also affecting the rest of the world. The rest of the world, major or global economic powerhouses like China, particularly whereby traces of the virus were first discovered, and of course the United States. But if you move into, of course, some of the prominent economic states like your Japan, they have already a negative, of course, a projection on their growth, and they are expecting the Japanese economy to stagnate in the last quarter. But of course, a lot of financials are going to be forthcoming, of course, as late as April, if I may put it like that, because that would somewhat signify the end of the first quarter of the year. And so all the information that we are going to receive with regards to the effects of the coronavirus in an economic sense are going to be what you would call lagging indicators. The lagging indicators come after the incident or all that has happened has transpired, and they report on where we are as a result of what has already happened. So we're going to be looking very closely, but what we can confirm to you, particularly with regards to the tourism industry. Now, tourism is all about people moving about from state to state, whether for leisure purposes or either through major tournaments and all of that. Now, the tourism industry globally has been in decline, but particularly in South Africa. In South Africa, the tourism industry has suffered the most, with a sharp decline in the entire sector of about 3% so far, and we're expecting it to get worse because all around the world, everyone is saying everyone must stay within their own regional space or their own countries, so that they can have some kind of contingency on how they contain the virus, the spread, understanding the virus a little bit better. The one thing that a lot of South Africans have a concern about is our flat-footedness with coming up with innovations, or the amount of research that we've invested in with regards to understanding this particular pandemic, because a lot of countries like China and the United States have already made public pronouncements on actively seeking ways to deal with the spread of the virus. Only today, a lot of countries, even the United States, the first time they spoke of coronavirus was back in the turn of the year. In January already, they were already speaking corona. For the very first time, our presidency, roughly some 5-6 months into, this corona thing or this corona pandemic that has been widespread all around the world, we are going to hear for the first time from the presidency as to how they plan to respond to this. All along we've been hearing everything that has been just watered down or just being taken from what the World Health Organization has been saying all along, which is a bit of a concern. I can tell where the point of frustration with a lot of people actually is, because of course it feels like we are just doing the bare minimums and we're not necessarily doing enough. How many people have been quarantined in this country? What are we doing? A lot of people are moving into public spaces. They're moving about. There are some people, there were some concerns around. There are people who have contracted the virus, but because of their immune systems, they say the virus is not necessarily detrimental to their health, or it's not something that is fatal, but they do need to be quarantined. Okay, so such people in such cases would be let go off, or they would be advised to stay at home, stay indoors, But a lot of these people come into contact with people in the public space. They use public transportations. They're in public spaces. They are with people in those homes. So those types of measures that the department has been putting into place, of just suggesting that other people should be quarantined in their homes or in their vicinities, and not having actually isolated places whereby they can efficiently deal decisively with this particular pandemic, has been less than convincing, if you ask me. But a lot of us, of course, we'll be waiting to hear what new developments are going to be there with regards to this particular pandemic. I want to, of course, in the first segment of our show, speak at length about the economic implications of not dealing properly with this particular pandemic. Now, last week I did speak in broad terms about business confidence in South Africa. When we speak of business confidence in South Africa, we speak about a cocktail of issues. Among others, political incomings, outgoings, cabinet reshuffles, political stability, but more than anything, the type of policies that we have in this country that make it conducive for people like investors to come and invest and actually get a return on investment. Now, I did mention the fact that South Africa had recently lost its status as the number one country for investment and returns. Now, we lost this particular status to Morocco. Okay, now Morocco is like the fifth largest economy in the continent at large. But of course, what they have been doing with regards to their policy reforms, their new government strategy, their renewal strategy has been very impressive. And of course, the world economy has taken note of this, and everyone who wants to do business wants to do business with Morocco, because the stability there's a lot that they are doing right now. But of course, a lot of economic activity has been hampered by, of course, the spread of the coronavirus. If you look at China, for instance, where this whole thing started, their economic growth, okay? Now, I'm going to talk about the relationship between South Africa and China directly, because South Africa is one of China's biggest trade partners, if you may put it like that. Outside, of course, of the context of them being in the BRICS alliance, but even as just trade nations, China and South Africa, a lot of our trade is coming from China. But if you look at the way that we've been unable to decisively handle the corona issue, because if, of course, in all honesty, we're able to contain the virus, we would not be having an escalation in the number of reported cases with regards to the coronavirus. And of course, the health department would have a clear, succinct plan on how they plan to contain the virus. If you look at entry points like borders, in this particular country, when other countries were shutting borders, we were actually opening borders. And in all border controls, there have been no testing of the coronavirus. Now, if you look at our neighboring states, your Zimbabwe's, your Mozambique's, your Namibia's, because of the likelihood of the coronavirus originating here and spreading to the rest of Africa, which is what logic will tell you, because the influx of foreign nationals is largely through South Africa, moving to other places, they are actually considering shutting their borders. And you ask the question, why have we not done this? For ourselves, for our own protection. It just tells you they have a sense of patriotism. They are not loyal to the extent whereby they're exposing their people to visible danger, even though, of course, they are the benefactors of the South African economy. But they are not willing to take that particular risk. Even in Zimbabwe, there was a strong pronouncement that we're going to close the South African border. Why? Because of the threat of the coronavirus. And of course, this is going to have a crippling effect. If this thing is not contained, it's going to have a crippling effect in the economy, because a lot of what is being said in social media makes a lot of sense. There have been a lot of conceptions thrown around about schools closing down, public health facilities being resized or whatever, and churches and all of these institutions that have a large number of people working there at a time, or people that go to them at a time, with a view of containing the virus. But to be honest, to this point, we have not yet clearly found a way to say this is our course of action. Now, of course, I say this with a certain amount of reservations, given, of course, the fact that the president is going to make a few pronouncements on this particular issue, and I'm interested to hear what is new, what is different, what is the strategy moving forward, and how is it going to be effective compared to what we've been doing so far, which is respiratory hygiene and basic hygiene. Washing our hands. That's all we've had in the bag for the longest time. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. The time right now is 18:24. Igama lami nguSiyabonga Pride Khuzwayo. I'm your host. We're going to be talking COVID virus, of course, and the effects of the COVID virus with regards to, of course, the South African economy and the global economy at large. We are going to go back to the music now. Hope you're going to enjoy this next one. One of my personal favorites. Hope you're going to enjoy this one, guys. Of course, ironically, there's no pun intended here. Okay, no pun whatsoever. But personally, I want to play Tuma Mina by the President. But sorry, not by the President. What am I saying? It's not by the President. But I'm going to play Tuma Mina because, of course, it's a song that I like. It's a song that I like. So I'm going to play Utuma Mina. Of course, once I've got my stuff, okay. So my stuff technically is now cooperating. So this is Baba Uhuma Sigela, may his soul rest in peace. Etinje Tumamina. Enjoy this one. Oh man, a classic number, Obaba Huma Sigela saying Tuma Mina. I wouldn't want to be a politician at this particular stage because all eyes, of course, are on political leadership and, of course, our health ministry as to how, of course, they are planning to deal with, of course, the corona virus pandemic. Now, of course, as it is the responsible thing to do, I am going to share, of course, some of the health tips that were shared by the World Health Organization around, of course, how we can, of course, play our role with regards to containing the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Now, among other things, we are told that we should at all cost avoid touching our faces. Now, I've noticed during this particular broadcast, a lot of you will actually attest to this who are watching on live stream that I have been touching my face an awful lot. It's not an easy thing to do, but I'm conscious whenever I'm touching my face. I never use my hands. I always use at least the back of my hand because, you know, at times you feel itchy, it's hot. I'm in studio. It's really hot in studio, you know, not just because of the show, but because the studio, the setting, of course, it has to be sunproof. So there isn't a lot of air flowing in and out of the studio. So one has to be very cautious on how you go about touching your face, because we say with your hand, you when you touch your face, you know, the virus can have an entry point. You know, your mouth, your eyes, your nose. Those are the probable or most easy entry points that the virus can actually get into your body. So we don't know, you know, how many people have the virus at the moment. You know, we're just trying to figure out as to how many people, of course, are diagnosed to have contracted this particular virus. So it's going to be interesting to hear how, of course, we are going to deal in a decisive manner with this particular, of course, pandemic. Another thing that we are encouraged to do, make sure you and the people around you follow good respiratory hygiene. This means covering your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze, then dispose of it immediately. Of course, when you do, cough, we do encourage you to exercise what they call respiratory hygiene, either cover it with your elbow or, of course, with a tissue or a piece of cloth that you might have. And, of course, disinfect the cloth if you are going to use it repeatedly, or, of course, discard the tissue if you are using it, of course, for that particular purpose. Now, of course, that is one of the recent pronouncements. Of course, if you go onto their website, the World Health Organization, and you search on advice on the COVID virus, of course, a lot of the posts there, of course, are dominated by, of course, the COVID virus as, of course, the one issue that is topical at this particular stage. Thank you to everyone who's joining us for a second segment. Igama lami Pride Khuzwayo, and you are tuned into 103.7 FM. This is the masterclass, and of course, unfortunately, I have some rather unfortunate news, some unsavory news to share with everyone. But I'm going to wait until later on in the show to share these particular news. Last week already I wanted, of course, to make that particular pronouncement, but of course I decided against it. But of course, having gone through the proper thorough processes, one has come to a decision, and I'm going to be sharing that particular decision with you in a short while. But in the meantime, I did say that we're going to talk COVID virus. But of course, the nature of my show today dictates that I should go beyond, of course, the confines of the COVID virus. I want to specifically talk about the impact that we as young people are having in this country. If you look at the recent unemployment statistics, they suggest that 50% of young people are actually unemployed. If you look at the demographics of those particular statistics, you know, the vast majority are the black Africans. So it means a vast majority, half of the population of our young people are somewhat economically segregated. Now, this is not a regime segregated move, but you could say it's a systematic engineered move, because a lot of people are somewhat systematically marginalized, if you may put it like that, if you're trying to be technical. But the vast majority of us are not having an impact in this economy, and the vast majority of us are going to inherit this economy, and we are going to inherit an economy with zero expertise. Half of us are going to inherit an economy with zero expertise, meaning there's bound to be some kind of collapse or discord in the quality of service that we can provide to our people, to this country. I was listening to a pronouncement. It was actually a speech, but through the speech, the leader made a pronouncement. Now, with the fear, of course, or because I just want to be objective with regards to how I want to be perceived or how I want the message to be received, I will not understate who had made this particular pronouncement. But the leader made a specific reference to, if at any point in your life, a kaya, your own house or wherever, you've seen how a house is like when it's going through renovations. Now, I have been fortunate enough that I've lived through a renovation at my house. And whenever there are renovations, the house, of course, is not in a particularly good state. But because you understand the objective that you are trying to achieve through, of course, renovations, then you enjoy it because you know where you are going. In South Africa particularly, there has been a lot of talk about, of course, us as black Africans reclaiming our economy. But whenever we make progressive steps to reclaiming our economy, if you start talking land expropriation without compensation, if you start talking black transformation, if you start talking anything that is progressive towards the black masses, all of a sudden the economy is shaky. And for the black politician, they don't have the incentive to follow through because they will be judged on how the economy has performed. So they've got no incentive to go and be like, yeah, but even if the economy is shaky, we'll still progress and continue to pursue whatever it is that we are mandated to pursue by the masses because we know the outright objective that we are trying to pursue. A lot of politicians do not have the will because a lot of them, to be honest, are in their 60s and 70s. So the economic decisions that they are making now, that we are going to bear the effects 20, 30 years from now, they are not going to be there to be held accountable. They make economic decisions that help us cope with the here and now, which is an unfortunate place to be at if you're a South African at the moment. The point I'm trying to drive at, though, over and above that, is a lot of us have very big opinions about what is going wrong, what should be done, but we are doing very little to change what is transpiring in our economy. If you look at it, a lot of economic analysts on our TV screens, on our YouTubes, on all of these tech platforms, on News 24, these media houses, they'll be quick to revert back to these financial experts who will tell us, no, the economy is rescinding, or we can resuscitate the economy by doing X, Y, Z. But the realistic truth that we are yet to confront is that in this country we are using first world methodologies, policies to solve problems in a third world context. How do you do that? A third world country, and you're using first world policies and first world solutions to solve third world problems. Our own politicians, our own people who are senior citizens of this particular country have not been vocal or active enough to devise their own ways of dealing with our own contextual problems. Because if you solve a problem and you don't consider context, then you are going to do a lot of trial and error. unfortunately. And that's a waste of resources, it's a waste of time, and a lot of people are slipping out, of course, of the middle class. If you look at the amount of jobs that are being lost in this country, very soon we're going to have a decrease or a downsize of the actual middle class that we're actually trying to push or increase in this particular country. And all of the good work that we've done in the past 25 years is going to be undone slowly by our lack of activity, or our lack of innovativeness, or our lack of broader sight of what is actually happening in our country. And we expect white people to give us the solutions to our own problems. And we are very poor at living in our own context. We are very poor at that. We are building apps. We are doing this. We are talking fourth industrial revolution. We're talking disruption, but we don't know what half of those things actually mean. If we are talking about fourth industrial revolution in a third world country that still produces electricity with a technology that was invented in the 18th or the 17th century, we're still using coal, we're still using fossil fuels in this country, and we're talking fourth industrial revolutions. Yet we've not even migrated from the basic revolutions of the world. What are we doing? What are we saying? It means we are not in touch with our own realities. If you're talking about Australia, if you're talking about Germany, if you're talking about the United States, those people have long moved on from these things. They're no longer dependent on them. They're talking nuclear energy. They're talking 5G now. They're talking all sorts of technical and technological innovations that warrant them being in the conversation of a fourth industrial revolution. But us, we are barely out of the first, and we are already talking fourth industrial revolution, meaning we are very detached from our own reality. Very detached from our own reality. It's a point of frustration for someone like me. Now, I have been listening to a lot of the things that I have been saying on air, because I have the benefit of pre-recording of course some of the stuff that I do through, of course, the live shows. But looking at the impact, what impact is this going to have? Yes, we are sharing information. Yes, we are sparking a discourse, but that's all we're doing. We're sparking a discourse. We're talking about these things, and we're doing very little to change the situation. Now, the one thing I want to challenge each and every South African, everyone is going to come across this particular broadcast at a point in time or even now, is to say, what are you doing to change your own life, to change your own community? Because it starts there. It starts with you, it starts with the people around you, it starts with your hood, it starts with, it starts there before we can even look at things at a macro perspective. But what are we doing at a micro perspective? I don't want to start a long, boring mesoeconomic debate about what should be done here, what should not be done there, because people are so advanced with regards to the economic scale or knowledge nowadays. People talking from a Keynesian perspective, and all of these philosophies of economic theory, but we are failing at the very first hurdle. The one thing we are teaching very well in our schools, in our society, because it's the rhetoric of the day, is to say people must migrate from basic employment or pursuing careers of basic employment to migrate to entrepreneurship and all of these things. But the first thing that we are failing to teach our young people is to how to create a system of value in the first place. Because all of a sudden, we want them to inherit businesses. We want them to do BE transactions. We want them to be entrepreneurs who are margin entrepreneurs. And marginal entrepreneurship, unfortunately, in a true sense, is not really entrepreneurship. Because if you don't know what you want, if you know what to sell, but you can't produce what you want to sell, who do you expect to produce what you're going to sell? So you want to start a business? Great. Where are you going to get the inputs? Where are you going to set up a factory? Where are you going to produce? How do you produce what you plan to sell? No. I don't want to. I don't want to be a producer. I just want to be a seller. Okay, who's going to produce? Who's going to determine how much your input cost is? Who's going to predetermine your cost of sales? So there's an industry that we're already missing out on because we don't understand value chain. And if you don't understand value chain, well, we are a long way from, of course, understanding the core or the essence of being in the business world. Because for now, we are just marginal entrepreneurs. And of course, if you're talking margins, you are also competing with these big corporates, big supermarket, big service providers, and they are always bundling and out-muscling us as startups from the market because they have what? They've got buying power. It makes sense. They've got buying power. So you can't compete them, can't out-compete them, can't outwit them. Talking disruption, this and that, yeah, seasonal trends. Those things are seasonal trends. But as soon as the big corporates catch on to what we are doing, guess what? They do exactly the same thing and they push us out using their financial muscle. So that's why we always have a big problem of small to medium enterprises not being sustainable businesses. Because even though you can do your proper and good study of gapology, servicing the market that has the money and the means to buy from you at that particular time, but the trends in the market will change. And unfortunately, more often than not, it doesn't change in favor of the small business. It changes in favor of the bigger business. The one thing that smaller businesses have as an advantage is that they can move faster than the businesses. Because if they make decisions, there's a long line or a long chain of people who have to be consulted before a decision can be made. But when you're a small business, you can make decisions quicker and you can move about in the market much quicker. But that is not necessarily enough to say you can have longevity in any business environment, because these people have long-term strategy, and they've got the financial resources to back up those particular strategies. Even if they mess up, they can afford to mess up. But you can't. If you mess up and you're squeezed out of the market, you're out. And chances are you're not going to get the funding again, you're going to be blacklisted, and you're permanently segregated from the mainstream economy just because you're a startup. I want to address this. I really feel strongly about it. I feel we are not doing enough. The government is not doing enough to support us. The government is not doing enough to support us. We ourselves are not doing enough to empower ourselves to be easily empowered or elevated from where we are. The amount of ignorance that we have is unprecedented in this country. Unprecedented. I'm particularly speaking about young people. Young people. The amount of ignorance that we have is unprecedented. It is totally unacceptable. What we are doing to this economy each and every day is we are shrinking the very prospects that this country has by not empowering ourselves enough or taking full opportunity of the opportunities that are presented to us on a daily basis. So, where is the consensus in all of this? Where do we begin to solve these things? By speaking less and doing more. Because I feel like everyone nowadays wants to take to Twitter, wants to take to Facebook, wants to take to Instagram to voice their discontent, dissatisfaction. Yeah, that's good. That's okay. But after that, where's the action? What are you doing? Are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? If you're part of the problem, then sit down, chief. You have no right to comment because you are part of the problem. If you are not part of the solution, then what are you? What are you doing, honestly? So as young people, I feel there's a lot that we need to take into perspective, and we shouldn't externalize a lot of things, because a lot of people, oh well, there's load shedding, well, it's not my problem, it's their problem. Oh well, I don't have a job, it's not my problem, it's their problem. They're not creating, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because we are so dependent on everyone else that we forget that we are capable. We forget that we have capacity. We forget that we're talented. We forget that we're competent. What are we doing? What are you doing? I've been saying a lot of things in this particular show. And in an introspection that I just had a conversation with myself. I was like, do you do half of the things that you talk about here? Or is it just theory? Totally unmarried to the practice. Do you practice half of the things that you preach? Or do you leave it to other people to actually practice what you preach? I was very disappointed with the ratio, how much I say, how much I do, how much I say, how much I do. Disproportional. So we can sit here behind microphones, behind the screens, and talk about things. But if we're not making things happen behind the scenes, if we're not changing lives, we're not meant to be in prominent spaces or just strategic positions because we don't understand why we are there. Fortunately, in my line of work, I have the opportunity to impact lives of young people on a daily basis. I have that particular opportunity to impact and change the lives of young South Africans on a daily basis. But when I look at it at a broader perspective, the very same quality of education that I was offered is the very same quality of education that I'm relaying or giving to them. But when I look at myself, I look at my skill set, I look at, how flexible am I to move about in the economy? I have a particular skill set which confines me to a particular profession or to a particular sector. And when you want to move about in the economy, you want to play a bigger role, you want to empower people, you want to penetrate certain spaces, you can't. Why? You don't have the specific skill set. And you are doing the very same thing to these young people. And some of them are not even taking full opportunity of what is being offered to them, which is unfortunate. But the very least that you are giving them is not going to necessarily give them the best prospects of the future. I mean, just a minute ago I was talking fifth industrial wave or fifth industrial revolution that we are fast approaching in the rest of the world. But here, it's a third world context, guys. We're in Africa, we're not in America. Okay, we're in Africa, we're not in America, and our reality is very different to theirs. They have every right to speak for fifth industrial revolution. We are in a third world context, probably in the second, or we're just moving out of, the first industrial revolution. And we're lagging behind. It's not even funny. We are lagging so far behind, it's criminal, it's treason. But all of this is due to our mentality. We always want things to be imposed upon us. We are not ready to start things. We're not ready to start our own revolutions. And for as long as we want things to be imposed upon us, dictated to us, and not be willing to take the plunge, the leap, and try our own new specific contextual solutions to the existential problems that we face on a daily, then we have no hope. We have little to no hope of changing the status quo. If we want to change the status quo, it means we need to change the way we do things. And unfortunately, not a lot of us want to change the way we're doing things. We're just stuck in this thing of maintaining the status quo, a status quo bias. We want to do the same things. We want to keep things the same. We adapt to change as human beings, but we are the one species that does not want change. We don't want to change. We are so adapt to change as human beings. Of all the species in the world, we are the most adept species to change, but we are the most resistant to change. We're not uncomfortable with exploring the unknown. A lot of us want to do things that we know what the outcomes will be. If I do this, I'll do it. It'll yield X. So I'll do it. But if I do this and I don't know what's on the other side, I'm not going to do it. Well, guess what? Nothing is going to be disrupted. Nothing is going to be changed. The status quo will remain the same because we are not doing anything different. And if we are waiting on our white counterpart or waiting from a messiah or politicians to change it, well, we are going to wait for a very long time, and in all likelihood, we are going to wait forever. But as responsible citizens, we have a greater role to play. It's unfortunate. A lot of us do not have the right skill set to move wherever we want to. But to those of us who have specific skills, then we should be doing more wherever we are to accelerate in those particular industries that we occupy. Because the honest truth is, we are doing the bare minimums. Everywhere you go, everyone is not doing as much as they possibly can. They're doing just what is required. And that is the problem with this country. Big problem. And the solutions are not going to come from outside. If we realistically want to move about in the world, be respected in the world, we need to come up with solutions for our own problems. Then we will gain the respect of the world. But for as long as things remain the same, the picture is very grim. And things are not going to change, unfortunately. I'm especially sad. Personally, I've enjoyed my journey here. You know, NCR given me a platform. I was just this person who came about from nowhere, asked for an opportunity, and they were like, okay, let's hear what you can do. Dropped a demo, dropped a profile, and they were like, dude, we need someone like you, go on the airwaves. But unfortunately, in my life, I'm at a crossroads, if you may put it like that, whereby I have to tap into new opportunities and move about. But I'm eternally grateful for what this particular platform has been able to teach me. And I am eternally grateful to the people who entrusted me with this responsibility. I'd like to believe that one has been able to establish a sensible or a sizable listenership, where people inquire or they ask me or they inbox me. They're like, why didn't you go to the show? Why haven't you said anything? And it's humbling, even for someone like me who's fairly new to broadcasting and all of this. I'm especially grateful for the opportunity. It's been quite a ride, past couple of months. But unfortunately, for me, I'm at the end, and this will be my last show in this particular platform. But of course, I can still interact with people, maybe not live on radio, but on social media. Social media is very powerful. Even if you have a message to share, social media is still the ideal platform to do it in. That's why from day one, all of my shows, they are on live stream, because social media is that much more powerful, but radio is equally as powerful, but I'm saying when I move on from this platform, either to a bigger platform or wherever, I'm still going to be grateful to everyone who's shown the faith and everyone who's shown support towards me, to say, we are behind you, we will listen to you, we will share your videos. What you're saying to us is of substance. It helps us to grow, it helps us to challenge our own perceptions, perspectives, and really to move out of our comfort zones. For me, that has been the highlight of my time, during this particular period in this broadcast, and for that I'll be eternally grateful. And I'm hopeful that I did touch one or two lives, because the whole point of doing these things is to improve people's perspective, improve people's lives, and once we're able to do that, then we can be proud of the work that we've done. So to everyone who's been a fan of the show, everyone who's followed the show, everyone who's spent an ounce of data, streaming the show, people who've shared my videos, I'm really grateful. I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity. I have really enjoyed my time here, but unfortunately, one has to move on to other things, and I I'm really grateful for what I've been able to do here, and I don't know, maybe in the future I'll be back. I don't want to say I'll never be back here again, but of course, my own circumstances dictate that now I have to move elsewhere. But of course, you never know what the future holds, man. Maybe one will be in a bigger platform, bigger station, because media, oh man, media is so nice. You fall in love with radio, and I'm one of those people that have certainly fallen in love with radio, and I'd like to thank the management of the station, for giving me an opportunity, not having had any experience. There's so many people when you go and knock, they'll tell you, hey, what experience do you have? And you're like, I don't have experience, and they'll deny you the opportunity. But here, people welcome me with open arms. I felt like I was part of the family from day one, and for that, I'll always be grateful. I'd like to thank everyone, of course, who's watching right now, because I can see there are a few people who are interacting, liking, as we speak, and I'm very grateful to all of you guys. Of course, I will share some videos from time to time, but not at the consistency of a weekly video, and not at the length that I used to, because we run for about an hour on these shows. But of course, when once in a while, when one has a powerful message to share, I will feel obliged, to get on the social media and just share it, man. But at this particular point, I'd like to thank everyone. It's an emotional kind of thing, but yeah, what can one say? What can one do? Sometimes life will point you in a different direction, but I'm certainly grateful for the opportunity. Thank you to the NCR family. Thank you to everyone, of course, who has been a part of this journey that I've been on for the longest time. And of course, my send-off, one of my favorite songs of all times, by a lady named Uzama Wagajobe, Eti Ndawayame. So that will be my final song as I sign out of this particular platform. Igama lami nguSiyabonga Khuzwayo, and for the very last time, you're listening to the masterclass on 103.7 FM. It's been a pleasure. The pleasure has been all mine. I have enjoyed your company. Hope, of course, you are going to enjoy, what's to come next. And I challenge anyone who wants to take over this platform. I think I've done my part, and I want everyone who feels they are going to do a better job, because I do believe there are people out there with even bigger potential, better capacity than me, and who can do a better job. It doesn't have to end with me. So I hope everyone who's listening or who has been a part of the journey can step up and be like, I want to be the next one. Igama lami nguPride Khuzwayo. Thank you so much. All the best, all the best, all the best to everyone. Do enjoy this next number, my personal favorite, Uzama Jobe. Zamajob eti indawo yami. I believe everyone has a place, and everyone should keep moving towards that particular place. Unkululeko is up next, and of course, getting us into the mood of the next show. The next number, of course, is from Puff Johnson, Eti Forevermore. Now, I don't want to leave, emotional, as you like. But yeah, man, it's been a ride. It's been a ride. It's been good, and thank you to everyone who's taken the time to, of course, watch this broadcast, and hope, of course, we'll meet again in the future. But for now, I leave you with the sounds of Puff Johnson, Tia Forevermore. Hope you enjoy this number. All right, I'm out of here.